Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody enjoyed their long weekend. We've got lots to talk about. The two conference final series have started. 1-0 leads for the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Dallas Stars. We'll talk about the two teams that were eliminated over the weekend. Actually, the three teams, because Friday it was Dallas and Colorado, and then Vegas, Vancouver, and then Philly and the Islanders on Saturday. So we can touch on all three of the teams that lost and the two conference final series. But Russ, we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead.
Well, nothing like watching the U.S. Open, and I'm sure a lot of New Yorkers are happy because while the Mets were home and the U.S. Open was there, and it's Labor Day weekend, there was no traffic because there's no fans. Usually the traffic's awful for that. But Novak Djokovic has always been an idiot in the sport, and the sport has always covered for him because he's a top player, because he's getting close to breaking some records now, and he was the number one med seed. And so, of course, during the first set of his game, he was losing, and at one point hit a ball really hard into the side, and, that's just what Djokovic does, right? Well, then, a couple of minutes later, he did it again and hit a line judge, and she got hit in the throat, and she went down. And after like 15 or 20 minutes discussion, they finally booted Djokovic. But any player gets booted right away. It's in the rules, like it's indisputable. But yet they took that long speaking to him and everything before they booted him. And I got to tell you, Brad Gilbert on ESPN embarrassed himself because while he was saying they did the right thing, he wanted them to review the video. And he was pretty much what he was basically saying without saying it was, well, this has happened before. But when a guy gets hit, he doesn't go down like a ton of bricks. He didn't say, ooh. He basically what he said was, yeah, she went down like a ton of bricks. And it's like, and if I was sitting next to him, and trust me, there were two other women on the panel, and they were argumentative with him, even though he was sort of agreeing that he was in the wrong, he was going down a bad path. And my basic point is, in the human anatomy, and Eck may know more than this than me, I don't think there's any edge to a man or a woman when you get hit in the throat like that in your Adam's apple.
If anything, don't men
have? Well, women don't have Adam's
apples. So there you go.
Apples. Yeah, I was thinking that too. I don't know. I don't even know if that's a myth. I'm not even sure. I actually don't know more than you anatomy-wise, Russ, I must say.
Okay.
So if Renee Richards was the line judge, then it would have been. But anyway, but no. I heard some of the debate on this. And the thing was, well, he didn't do it on purpose.
Who cares?
Okay, well, honestly, if you do something in terms of killing somebody, not doing it on purpose means manslaughter as opposed to murder. It's still somebody being killed. Okay,
I would use the example like if I'm doing something stupid, and let's just say we'll use Eck as an example, and let's say I'm just shooting puck and I shoot one in his junk, I still did it. It doesn't matter whether I meant to do it or not. I still did it. It still hurts him. You still
a little bit.
You should apologize. And the worst thing is,
if you meant to do it, I'd be pretty angry.
Yeah. And Djokovic didn't even go to the press conference. He just got in his super high class or super expensive SUV and left. And that to me was worse. So they only fined him $10,000 when the actual maximum fine for it is 20. Yeah. And again, this whole sport props this guy up. They call him Joker, and you know what? You can't call him Joker and then also, not be completely outraged when he does stuff like this. So the sport's got to stop covering for this guy.
Well, you call him Joker based on how Joaquin Phoenix was in the movie because he was just running rampant and killing people in that movie. And if you were hitting the junk, you'd be singing soprano right now. Let me just touch on this quickly. I'm a big fan of the Yankees. The way that they're playing right now has been disgraceful. But I like listening to the radio broadcast, and I was doing so last night, burning some wood in the fire pit and listening to John Sterling and Susan Waldman. And they may not be your cup of tea, but normally they're pretty good. But the game was being played in Buffalo, and they were doing the remote broadcast from Yankee Stadium from their own broadcast booth, so they weren't in Buffalo. But you think that the broadcast crew would have the knowledge, that they're playing in Buffalo, they should know something a little bit about the stadium or the history or whatever. In the span of 5 minutes, Sterling could not recall the name of the Buffalo franchise. It's the Bisons. He didn't know that.
Which has been around forever.
Which has been around for years and years. Was surprised that the seating capacity for a AAA stadium was close to 20,000. John, it was built as a major league capable stadium in the 80s when Buffalo was trying to get them a major league team. And then Susan Waldman was talking about, oh, look at in the outfield, look at all those houses over the right field fence. They're not houses. It's basically a tent for like a beer venue. It's a parking lot. It's like, so they knew nothing, absolutely nothing about Buffalo and about where the game was being played and about the stadium. You would think that their broadcast crew or their, whoever's providing information, then would give them a little bit of a packet to tell them.
I still have listened to them on car trips, and to be nice as I can be, they're both past it. They need a complete replacement of their radio crew and it's not because of that game. That is embarrassing, though. That is, but it's just they are boring. They are dead set boring. And poor John doesn't see everything the way he used to. And on a monitor, it's got to be worse. And all Susan's looking for is Roger Clemens. And if she doesn't see him, it's not a good game.
Yeah, and I don't know what the cutouts at Citi Field, Russ, but it's humorous in Buffalo. Right behind home plate, there's a cutout of Andrew Cuomo, which is ridiculous.
What about the peanut vendor? Is he there?
No. Well, he's in dead right field. Oh no. No, and Geddy Lee, who has box seats at Rogers Center, he's sitting next to Cuomo with his glasses on.
When's the last time he played in Buffalo, Geddy Lee? That's the big question.
I was at that concert, so there you go. Okay, let's start the show.
Let's start here. It's yes. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, September 8th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Jan Levine, rocking a little bit of a retro hockey cap.
I like it.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and if Funky thinks that by Jokovic pleading for them not to throw him out was a cool thing, it's not.
Oh, man. And I'm Eklund, thanking the chat room for giving me the date, Richard. Appreciate it.
He needed a cheat sheet.
You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time, filling in the Cummings going through the hockey world. And I should know the date. My wife's birthday is Thursday, so I should be getting close. I should be pretty close around there. So anyway, we got lots to get into. And what I really want to start with, though, is before we get into this, there's a bit of a rumor that's coming out in the last little bit here about Crawford from the Blackhawks, and he was offered apparently a 3.5 around their contract, 3.5 million 1 year deal, and the ball's in his court now. And what I want to talk about with that, before we get into the games, which we will definitely get into, is do we think that this is at all setting the goalie market at all? Like, is there any kind of goalie market setting here for Crawford doing that?
No. And if I'm Crawford, he may have to accept that deal, but I don't think it's setting it. I think it's just, hey, he's a different situation because he's better than he thought. They wouldn't have re-signed him at all if he didn't play well in these playoffs and had just been eliminated right away, right? They wouldn't have given him any contract, but now he earned a contract. So then they figured, all right, let's offer him this. It won't kill us. And best case scenario is we have a really good goalie next year, but he's not going to take it right away. He's probably going to wait a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think he might, but although I think there is some smartness to taking it right away, based on what you have going on here with so many goalies out there. But we'll get back to that a little bit because let's get into the game.
You're right about that. It's interesting.
Yeah, let's get back into the games first here, and let's start over in the Western Conference with in this game. Dallas and Colorado. I mean, Colorado just literally. I mean, it's amazing that Colorado got as far as they did when you look at all the players they were missing, and that they were one game away. They would have gotten smoked in the next round, I thought. But that Dallas played really well. I mean, this is a big victory, for the Dallas Stars.
Well, go ahead.
I was gonna say, look, I mean, even though I've picked against Dallas every round, and we'll pick against them again in this one. I like a lot of the guys on the team. I've known Tyler Seguin since he played for the Plymouth Whalers. That's why. I mean, I like a lot of these guys. Ben is a very likable guy, and he's probably playing the best hockey in the last 3 years. But Colorado was kneecapped with all the injuries. Like that Colorado team, I am convinced would have beaten them even if they were at half strength, they weren't even at half strength at the end, and they still put up a valiant effort. So I can't discount anything Colorado did. I could say Dallas did what they needed to do, and they started to do that even in the conference final. But I can't say that Dallas is on a magic carpet ride yet either. I'm not completely sold.
Well, okay. First of all, I have to thank the Dallas Stars for winning me at least $200 in my fantasy hockey pool because by them winning that game, I get five Dallas Stars going into the conference final. But that being said, Russ is completely correct. Colorado was so wounded that it wasn't just both. I mean, both their goalies would have been enough, but Johnson and Donskoy and Calvert, and then Landeskog in Game 6. Dallas tried to give away that game at points. They were saved by Joel Kiviranta, who had the game of his life. And especially in the third period when they give up that goal to make it 4-3 and they respond 10 seconds later, it gave Colorado no opportunity to put the pressure on Dallas, to have Dallas open it up, to take chances, to have them counter attack.
And remember, we got to remember, that's Michael Hutchinson in net.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to talk about Kiviranta, though. We have to talk about that. That was just that to me was such an amazing.
It's an amazing moment. I don't know if he's going to have a great career.
No, but it's one of those things that makes the NHL playoffs the NHL playoffs. To me. That's like, and we haven't. This to me of all the I was trying to remember all the best stories. I mean, obviously you have players like John Druce, who people will always consider John Druce like a player who gets hot in the playoffs, or
Chris Kontos.
The guy to do it in a Game 7 with a hat trick, tie the game, and win it in overtime in his first NHL playoff game. That I don't think anything can top that. Like, I was trying to think of anything that could top that as far as.
It's hard to top that.
Just like and it's the kind of thing that, telling people we're down the beach for the weekend, and people were talking about hockey, and people were talking about Kiviranta. I'm like, this is just, when does somebody come up to talk about the Dallas Stars to me ever, but people are coming up, I can't believe that kid did that. And people just, and then what happened? And then I tell the story to other people, and they would get excited about it. It was just one of those things, people just
But I'm really saddened that I have had to point this out on social media over the weekend, that if you and first of all, the replay, the play-by-play, the finished play-by-play of Kiviranta's overtime goal is phenomenal. The play-by-play announcer is screaming at the top of his lungs at the goal. It's great. But if you watch that replay and you watch how the Colorado players were standing in front of that, the two defensemen were standing literally 2 or 3 feet away from Hutchinson, and the center on the play, who was, by the way, Nazem Kadri, was standing at the top of the crease. And when the pass went to Kiviranta, he was caught totally out of position and was responsible for the goal. So Naz, sorry, you had a great playoff, but you cost your team the series.
I'm going to give Kiviranta some credit on that play too, because
he went to the open space.
He actually, all 3 goals he scored were relatively spectacular. I mean, like the first tip, he was getting checked away as he deflects it into the corner. The second goal was like an unbelievable angle.
Yeah, he scored on the goal line, but
on the rebound. And then this play, when everything's crazy in overtime, and he recognizes, that he has a moment to catch the defense sleeping.
Well, he went to
the flat. You don't see like, that's the kind of play you see like, veteran players not doing sometimes.
He went to the soft point of the zone where there was nobody there. He waited for Sekera to pass out in front of the net. But the thing was, Kadri was asleep. He was standing at the top of the crease. He was supposed to be covering that guy, and that he was responsible because when the pass went out, he lunged at Kiviranta because he knew he was out of position. And after the goal, he sort of swiped his stick and realized that he was responsible.
There's a lot of other things that led up to that loss.
Sure.
I'm not gonna hang it on Nazem Kadri.
But Mike had to get his shot in on Nazem Kadri. And Ryan Grace was there also and let him get open. I mean, to me, the key goal obviously was the tying goal, because you just can't give up that goal 10 seconds after you score the game winner. And lots of defensive breakdowns on that one also, because Hutchinson made the first save. And, I mean, Kiviranta scored from a sharp angle. Yeah. You just can't let the guy get there. I mean, I don't
know how you stop that play. Like, You could the rebound. He controls the rebound to the side, which is what you're supposed to do. But granted, he can maybe should have controlled the other side, but it still was a relative.
I'm not blaming Hutchinson. I'm blaming the defensive coverage on that, not Hutchinson specifically.
Yeah.
He made the first save.
No, that's true, but he was pretty covered. I mean, not totally covered.
He had enough space. He had more than enough space.
It was just the angle.
The angle.
He's behind the net. Like I'm thinking at that point, he's behind the net. If I'm covering him like that, the place he put that just so calmly. I mean, it's a really great story and an interesting, twist on everything. And that, that I really loved about that game. That was just one of those games that was epic. I mean, that series was epic.
Yeah.
Dallas' whole run has been like crazy fun. Like for a team that usually doesn't get a whole lot of attention for being kind of like a boring team, Dallas has had an amazingly exciting playoff run.
Right, and they've done it with their number 2 goaltender who gets a shutout in game 1 against Vegas, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I just have to say about Colorado, it's like you can't really, in terms of a postmortem, you can't really trash them because they were so wounded. But I do think that what was revealed by at least early in the series until he got hurt is that Pavel Francouz is not a number 1 goaltender. Now
we've learned that.
Yeah, now he's an extended. He's a good backup. He's a good 1B. He could play 25 to 30 games in the NHL. Grubauer's got a year left in his contract. With the goalie market being as it is upcoming, I'm sorry, if I'm Joe Sakic and I have an opportunity to go out and get a Stanley Cup winning goaltender if Holtby's out there, I'm going to sign a goalie.
I don't know about that. Grubauer was fine, and getting hurt started the downfall a little bit of the Avs. I mean, if Grubauer was in there, I'm not sure we're having this conversation.
You're throwing him in to give Francouz a little bit of a break. You're throwing him into a situation and not play for months and months, not expecting to play at all. He was the better goalie during the regular season by quite a bit.
I'm basing it on the evidence that
has made everybody look bad. No, so it's like, I mean, that's the other thing too. Like this Dallas team has scored goals on everybody. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we can say that he's he hasn't shown that he's a starting goalie. But
that's all I'm saying.
Demko has necessarily. I mean, Demko came up unbelievably well, but that's just a couple game sample too. So it's hard to go to either extreme there. To me,
I think what you saw is he gets exposed with repeated usage, and they got the book on him and how to beat him. Yeah. But during the regular season, when you're not playing the same team over and over again, and the time frame to prepare is smaller, he's fine in terms of as a number 2 goalie. And I think Grubauer is a number 1 goalie. Would it shock me if Colorado went out? No, but I also need to think they're going to have to start marshaling and saving some money for some of the other contracts they're going to have to dole out over the next couple of years. And signing a guy like that to a longer-term deal is not going to be cost-efficient.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think Khudobin's the number 1 goalie as well. Like, I honestly do. And I think
I really still don't. I mean, I really don't. I think he's a decent goalie. They said in the chat room, I said he sucks. I don't know if I've ever said he sucks, but I don't love him as a goalie. And I don't love him as a goalie because he's unconventional. I just don't think he is a number 1. I think there are times that, you can shoot high on him. And, right now it's not hurting him, so I can't say a word. But if everybody's going to say that they knew that Khudobin would be the better goalie than Ben Bishop and he'd be the one leading the Stars, you'd all be liars.
I mean, honestly,
you were the only one in America, Eck. Yeah. The only one.
Yeah, honestly, I like going into the playoffs. Like I said, having 5 players in a fantasy hockey pool, I thought I was dead with Khudobin being the number 1 goaltender. I thought that any Dallas success was going to be dependent on Bishop playing the way he did in last playoffs, where they got to 7 games against St. Louis, and when they're up 3-1 and they put Bishop in, and what happened with him. He's pretty much done for the playoffs. I can't see him ever going back in there, but it's going to be a pretty heavy burden for Khudobin against Vegas. He did well in game 1, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah,
let's talk about Vancouver.
I mean, to close this off, I think Khudobin is potentially. I've always thought he had potential starter in him. I don't think he's a definite 100% starter, and I wouldn't trade Kadri for him. So I'm just going to throw that out there as well. I wouldn't trade Kadri for Khudobin. That's what I'm just saying. I wouldn't do that.
I know, but who's saying that? I mean,
how good I think Khudobin is, and how good I think.
When did that become an option?
It was pretty quick. You guys are slow. Come on, that was a joke.
Okay.
Joke. Ha ha ha.
Needs work on the delivery.
Yeah.
All right. Never mind.
Go to the Catskills.
Fair enough. Panthers and Flyers.
Okay.
Let's go. Let's move on to this series because, again, it's just the strangest series for the Flyers. And there was no question the Islanders were the better team the entire time. And it was one of the weirdest things. And I think I heard Pagnotta maybe say something like that. I was on XM and he said something like this was that day, like that Saturday afternoon. Say something like if the Flyers make the conference finals, they will be the least impressive team to ever make the conference finals, which I had to kind of agree with. Because and this is nothing against the Flyers, but there were some definite issues with the team.
Oh yeah.
And because the funny thing is, whenever I'm watching, when you're watching and your team's out of the playoffs and you get to like the conference finals, or even when I'm watching a Stanley Cup final, I always look at those two teams like those are the two best teams in hockey, right? Those are and in your heart they're not. Like that there's other teams out there that could beat them in a 7-game series right now, but they got there. They got there, and the fact that they got there is what it is. So I think a lot of people were looking at this series like saying, in the East, the Flyers, and there's a lot of teams that are better than the Flyers, which they are right now.
Well, I just had this. I said this after the 3-game sevens that all 3 teams that won Game 7 were up 3-1 and blew games 5 and 6. And I essentially said thanks for wasting our time because and honestly, Philadelphia won Game 5 and Game 6 by the skin of their teeth, and they were, and I picked them to win the series in 7 games because I thought that they were a better team based on what they did in the round robin.
Same here,
right? And what they did against Montreal, and they were completely outplayed by the Islanders. And I'm shocked that the Islanders allowed them to get to Game 7 based on how badly they beat them in Game 7.
We saw the cracks in the armor for the Flyers, right? And the question is, we talked about this before. I thought Claude Giroux was a little better in Game 7, but you look at the offense and who they have, Giroux and JVR. I mean, there are fewer players that stepped up to show up than those that they have on the team. There are a lot of passengers on that team, especially defensively also, which puts into question, was this season an aberration? Or is it something, how much reinforcements are going to be needed to potentially get them back there, right? They have a number one goalie in Hart, there's no question, right? We saw how good Provorov is. I thought Myers played well. I thought Sanheim had a decent series. The rest of the blue line, Niskanen looked old in my opinion. We know how bad Gostisbehere was. And then offensively, Kevin Hayes, I thought, had a good series. But how many other guys offensively do you look at and say, they're guys I can count on for next year based upon what we saw in this series?
I mean, I'm not going to, sugarcoat it. I don't think this season was an aberration because they were good in the season and they left before the season ended, they were hot. But they are going to have a bigger chore to try and become the same team next year because of the cap, aging players, and also some of the younger players who the fans were putting into these great positions saying, hey, we feel like Myers and Sanheim are a shutdown pair, and they're not ready yet. Yeah. They're not. I mean, Myers.
They're both talented players that are on their way. I don't think you should also slay them for this. I think.
Whoa, hold on. You do have to slay Travis. Hold on. You do have to slay Travis Sanheim a little bit because the turnovers in those last 2 games were awful.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I agree.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Well,
and Sanheim turnovers. Yeah, Sanheim has a turnover bug to him. I mean, we saw it throughout the year too. Like, how many times did he fall over? Remember those situations where he fell over 2 games in a row and caused the Flyers big goals? He just was skating and he just did, crossovers with his skates and fell.
Not to this degree, though. These were high pressure turnovers. This is where you say, okay, we got a really talented player here, but now this is where we've pushed him to the max.
Yeah.
He didn't pass the test. He did not.
Part of that also, I believe, is the fact that you're facing one of the better forechecking teams.
That's good. No, you're right.
And the Islanders will make people look bad. And they absolutely, they forecheck with 5 players all the time. And that's the key. Like that is what they do. And that's what Trotz used to do with Nashville. Mm-hmm. Didn't do it as much with Washington, but it's interesting how he takes sort of the defensive strategy he used in Washington and the offensive strategy he used in Nashville for this team. But Trotz really has like a definite ability to just get these guys the pinching defensemen the defense pinching skills are incredible for this team. The Islanders defense pinch better.
Okay, let's get back to the Flyers. The big issue is aging defensemen, young defensemen. They're going to lose a few defensemen. they don't have a lot to replace. You know, if you're going to count Friedman as a replacement, fine, but you're still going to have to go on the market or trade and get something else. To me, it is imperative to break up Giroux and or Voracek at all costs, because the problem is both of those guys there now represent this long-standing problem of not being able to get over the hump. They got a little further this year, but these two guys are not getting any younger, and Voracek's contract is almost impossible to trade. Right. I would be calling Ottawa. I would be calling anybody to at least try and get trade discussions going with Giroux, because at this point, it's only going to get worse. He's not a bad player, don't get me wrong, but you can't count on him the way you used to. He has to be a complimentary guy, and they're not set up to be. Until he's gone, they're always going to look for him for more.
And we talked about this on Off the Post on the weekend, because Anthony and Russ were basically saying, you know, either Giroux or Voracek. And I don't think there's any way that Chuck Fletcher is able to move either one of them with an 8 at the beginning of their contracts with multiple years left, especially in a flat cap market. I honestly think, first of all, I think everybody expects Gostisbehere not to be back on the Flyers next year. I wouldn't doubt, based on how he doesn't fit with Vigneault, that they consider buying out JVR. Because it would be 6 years, things divided. But if you look at the cap hit, it's under $3 million for the first year, then a big cap hit in the 6th year, and then in the second year, and then the following 4 years are really low. And he's not a $7 million player anymore, and he definitely isn't a $7 million player with Alain Vigneault. And I don't think you're going to find anybody to take $7 million times 3 years off of your hands. So they have to do something now, because I think their window is now.
Their window is weird. I mean, their window is.
Window with Giroux and Voracek is.
The window with Giroux and Voracek may have passed, Mike. I mean, to be honest, I mean,
right. I think it's passed.
To me, so like, if I look at this, like, you know, I see them more along the lines of their window is. I mean, I think they're young. I think some of their young. They have 4 young defensemen that I really like, which I think most teams don't have, which is something that I would give them credit for. You know, they have 4 young defensemen that I really like. Gostisbehere, I think, is an okay defenseman too if he could get his act together. I don't think he's going to be back, though. I agree with you on that. But I do have other guys too.
The question is, what is more marketable in terms of a trade? Is it retaining, say, $2.5 million on Giroux to make him a $6 million player, or is it buying out JVR or retaining $2 million on JVR at having $5 million for 3 years? I think either trading JVR or buying out JVR is more of
okay, but they don't have to buy out JVR right away. They can explore those other things first. Sure. And that's what I would do. The JVR thing, you wait till the last minute, because at the end of the day, if JVR has to come back, it's not like it's going to kill you to have him in the lineup for 10 minutes a game. It's not going to kill you.
Right.
And you'll still have him on the power play. And during the regular season, he'll still be a benefit of some degree. I think if you took $2.5 million off Giroux's contract, you would get buyers for him. I do.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think.
Well, you're moving away though from the face. Again, not disagreeing with you, but you are moving away from the guy who's probably the face of your franchise.
And it's over. Like Fletcher's been moving that way. At this point, we all saw it's like Kevin Hayes' team. You might as well make it Kevin Hayes' team. I think you have to jump in that direction now, because the longer you wait with those other guys, the more in the middle you're going to be and still declining while your younger players are getting better.
I think the JVR contract, as you said, is going to be the hardest. Although, as Mike said, you could buy him out, but 7 years, $7 million for the next 3 years. Gostisbehere, and also, look, Matt Niskanen did not have particularly good playoffs, in my opinion.
No, but he was okay in the last game.
Making $5.75 million is a lot of money next year.
I know. Listen, I knew that too, but I'll give Niskanen a pass. I'll bring him back.
I think this is Couturier's team, Russ. I think that's what it is. I mean, it's not Hayes' team. It's Couturier's. Hayes is a player, but I think
Hayes was their best player in the playoffs.
Hayes was their best player. Actually,
Couturier, I think, was a bit hampered by playing with Giroux.
No, listen, you could make Couturier captain. That's fine. But if Hayes did what he's done in the playoffs, it's still going to be his team. He's got the imprint on it. They love him in the locker room. It's the thing about Couturier is he is not a bombastic guy, same as Giroux. Right. And at some point, even if Couturier is the captain, there's going to be a lot of guys that follow Hayes.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think you've got Hayes and Provorov, I think, is another captain. down the line. I really do. I think that Provorov is a captain type quality player.
Yeah, I wouldn't even make Provorov captain. He's really good, does everything. He never speaks up. Provorov never speaks up.
Yeah, not yet, but
Well, I mean, he's.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that people are. I think they think with the confidence he's starting to. Like I've noticed. I mean, more and more. But listen, Hart obviously had a great playoff. I at the end of the day, I mean, one of the things that you really had, like, and I tweeted about this, and I got some crap from the Flyers, but I honestly feel like the coaching was terrible in the series. Like I felt like they got totally outcoached by the Islanders. Not that it maybe would have mattered, but the fact of the matter is you cannot not score a single power play goal in a playoff.
No, listen, that's a problem.
13.
And not make any changes on the power play.
Well, that's we talked about this beforehand, right? AV and changes. That's one of the major criticisms of him, that he has an inability to adjust within game and game to game also.
Well,
and it wasn't just him. I mean, obviously, you guys know I'm not a Tyrion fan, but come on, he's in charge of the power play. They scored one power play goal in 2 playoff series.
Well, I mean, honestly, their most effective power play point guy was not even in the lineup. So, I mean, Gostisbehere should be the point guy in the power play. He wasn't.
Provorov's their best power play point guy, but I agree. Gostisbehere is a very good power play guy. That's what he does. But listen, at the end of the day,
it gets his shot on net. Gostisbehere doesn't.
For them to make the slightest change, and the change they made on the power play was starting the second unit once. Like they started the second unit once just because they were doing better than the first unit. That's the only thing they did. They didn't change.
But again, okay, if we want to lament over the power play, the 2 biggest cogs that you have to figure out on the power play are Giroux and Voracek. They need to end that.
No, I agree.
Because again, the big problem was, where do we put Giroux on the power play? Let's put him on the left side. Now let's put him on the right side. Like, where are we going to put him?
Yeah, they didn't know what to do with them. They didn't, and they just. And then also, can we talk a little bit about pulling the goalie with 6 minutes to go?
Yeah, that was just
like in games that we've seen where if you get one goal, like if the Flyers say it's 3-1 and they get one goal with 3 minutes to go, and to make it 3-1, that still gives them a shot. Like to say that why don't you call a timeout and perhaps try to motivate the team to score a goal in the next couple minutes, as opposed to pulling the goalie and literally destroying the final 6 minutes of 2 games. Like that, they were just completely the games that weren't in hand.
You can thank the Leafs for that, because they pulled the goalie with 5 minutes to go, down 3-0, and scored 3 extra attacker goals.
That was
a miracle. But I'm just saying, you can thank.
It was 5 minutes to go. One, I mean, it's different than 7 minutes to go. Like you're talking about like a third of the period here, and they both were done, and literally. I think it takes all the momentum away from your team when you do that.
I think it was a symptom of the fact that they really weren't generating a ton of scoring chances 5-on-5, and it was at that point that there was desperation that they needed
anyway, and they weren't in the games that they won too. But the fact what you saw was that the Flyers had this ability to quite quick strike suddenly after not controlling anything at all. So quick strike
against a team that was dozy. That's my criticism of the Islanders. That series should have been wrapped up in 5 games. They went into a coma for games 5 and 6 at times. They were up. What were they up? They were
down.
Philly was up 2-0, and the Islanders came back and scored. Woke up and scored 2 or 3 goals. It's like
before that they were up 3. Flyers were up 3-0, right? So and then in game 5 they were up 3-0, and the Islanders.
Yeah. So I mean,
and that part of that goes to the coaching, like the holding leads, things like that, like basic things, like how are we playing against the team that's when we're up 3-0? What do we change? How do we? And the Flyers change nothing, and to continually throw this like sling back power play where you're going to pass back as many times as you possibly can. Oh my gosh, I just felt like crawling through the TV and screaming.
And again, another criticism of AV is we didn't see Morgan Frost not for 1 minute, and that is a failure. It's a complete failure, because at the end of the day, you should have gotten him into some of the playing games to see what you had, to see if maybe he'd be good to put in the lineup, because you can't tell me that lineup was so good that Morgan Frost couldn't have cracked a spot if he looked good. But we'll never know, because we don't know.
Yeah, don't worry.
Farabee was doing perfectly fine too, and him being removed to keep Grant and Thompson going, who were both like really. I mean, Thompson was winning faceoffs. That was it, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the reality was, and Grant really wasn't doing anything, to be honest.
No, he wasn't doing much.
I could have had Farabee in for him all the time. I mean, Farabee's part of your future. At least give him experience. at least give him a chance to experience something.
Let's touch a little bit on Vancouver before we move on to the conference finals, because we have to say Demko was incredible in the 3 games. He kept them in the game in Game 7 until the end. I know that all the talk regarding Vancouver now is the goaltending, and Russ, I don't know what Benning is going to do, but in a way, he could still sign Markstrom, and this situation gets solved next June when he exposes Markstrom to Seattle. And I think Seattle might take Markstrom if he's under contract.
Right. But I think now the fact that Markstrom, turned down whatever advances they had given, you offer him 3 years, at like 5.5, 6, and you say, take it or leave it. But we're going to only give you a couple weeks to figure it out because we got another guy waiting here and we've got a plan B. And I think that's what Benning will do. I don't think he's going to give him like a 5-year deal.
Right.
And you know what? That's what they should do, because, again, why overpay at that position when you might have another guy that can play it? You're still not a team that's fully ready to win the cup. You might be a team now that could squeak into the playoffs again, but that defense needs a big overhaul before you ever talk about that team winning the cup.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Jen.
So October 9th now is the start of free agency, given some of the dates have kind of moved up, right? So really, as you said, there's a month. They need to know before that, because we talked, as Russ said, they need help on the blue line. You have Hughes, Tanev has been okay, Myers is okay, but we talked about that if they really need an infusion of talent to get to that next level consistently, the blue line is where they need it. And if they're going to try to be even relatively aggressive in free agency, they need to know what their cost commitment is going to be, because we can get Demko, replace Markstrom with a 1B or a 2.
Right.
We talked about Grice being a possibility. Save several $1 million, use it towards your defenseman, and that'll help your overall team. I do think you said probably maybe not this week, but the latter part of this week, early next week, if they're going to make an offer to Markstrom, it probably comes then. Probably give them like 2 weeks to make a decision, and then they're going to have to move on because they're going to have to decide in terms of what they're doing in free agency, given that it's now only a month away.
Yeah, and Benning might be busy in terms of, remember, Quinn Hughes and Pettersson have 1 year left on their ELCs. He can extend them after October the 9th. So he can, but this year they'll still be on their ELCs. So that's an advantage. And we know the history of teams that try to win things when the young players, when their young stars are on their ELCs, because they have an advantage. Now, I don't know whether that's going to be an advantage for Vancouver, because that means, they only have that window for 1 year, but they might be able to go out and either trade for or sign players on 1 year deals while both Hughes and Pettersson are making less than $1 million. But going forward, Pettersson's going to make 8 or 9. Hughes is going to make 7 or 8 at least. So that's their dilemma. I think they're a win in a way. They're a win now team, and they've got cap space. And we talked about Torrey Krug, we talked about other defensemen, but they need another defenseman, maybe 2 defensemen.
Oh, I don't think they're a win now team, Mike. I don't. I think this was just, they had a little run ahead of schedule.
Okay.
But I don't think it's a win now, because I still don't think they're set up for it. Honestly, I don't think they should trade Besser either. I think they should try and figure this out, because you could keep bridging the other guys for a while.
Yeah.
Then I think you'd be in better shape. I would definitely trade for Tannen, see what I could get for Sutter, even if someone just, makes me give him a draft pick to take him. He actually did okay, so he might be a little more marketable now. I would work on all of that first.
Yeah, I would also consider buying out Erickson.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you could consider it. I don't think they're going to do it.
You know what? It's not a great, but he's no way, shape, or form worth $6 million. Not even remotely.
I know.
Right, so if you can free up some salary, even though there's a downstream impact, it might be beneficial.
We don't know.
Edler's got 1 more year also at $6 million, and then he becomes a free agent.
Is he a buddy with Pettersson, though? Does he help Pettersson? If he does, they're not going to buy him out.
Yeah, but that's a lot of money to pay for a guy who's a caddy.
Yeah, the problem is there's absolutely no savings on buying out Erickson, because he had heavy signing bonus. It's almost $6 million in the first year, and then it goes down to a little under 4. So they really save nothing.
Then got it.
Yeah, for them to save money, they're probably going to have to buy out or trade Sutter or buy out a guy like a Beagle or a Roussel who are making him threes and I think being overpaid.
They overpaid substantially for both those guys. I think we were each shocked as to what they gave those guys contract-wise.
And we don't know the future of Michael Furland, who keeps getting hurt every year, and he's a three and a half.
I know the future. He'll be on the IR.
He'll be on LTIR. If those concussions continue, he's going to be on LTIR.
It's true. It really is. All right, let's get into the other series. Now we're into the finals now. So made our picks beforehand. I went 10-2 so far in the playoffs. I'm really happy about that. I've never done well in the playoffs. I'm going to just say I'm 10-2. The only playoff rounds I missed were Montreal. I did pick Pittsburgh to beat Montreal despite all the talk we had on here, and then and I also picked Colorado to beat Dallas. But besides that, I got every other series right. My final one here, my final pick here, I'm going with Vegas, and I'm going with the Islanders. So obviously,
that's why I went with Vegas and the Islanders.
Yeah,
Vegas, Tampa.
Vegas, Tampa. Honestly, it's like, I said this before the 8-2 demolishing. Tampa. Let's just say this: the Islanders. You have to give them credit, kudos for what they've done so far. But they're in a realm now against a team in Tampa that even without Stamkos and that they have too much firepower. And they were successful where many teams wouldn't in shutting down the big line of Pasternak, Bergeron, and Marchand. And what did they do last night against the big line that essentially won the series against the Flyers, which was Nelson, Beauvillier, and Josh Bailey. They shut
hold on. They did not shut him down. Vasilevsky shut it down. Nelson had 2 breakaway, 1 shorthanded, 1 regular.
I'm just looking at if they scored or not.
But he had opportunities. I mean, the first one he missed the net on though, Russ. The puck rolled on him. He missed the net completely.
I know, but
they did have chances. I think the bigger issue is defensively they couldn't stop Tampa. Right? They did have chances. At least let me raise it. A handful of chances. I wouldn't say they had a consistent attack. The only guy I thought showed a lot. I mean, Nelson clearly did. Barzal I thought had a good game. The rest of them, I don't think, had a particularly good game, and they took an enormous amount of dumb penalties. And you figure they're going to clean up a lot in the next game.
They're going to clean up a lot. They did have plenty of chances. If the power play was even 50%, they'd have been in that game. But the idea was when it started to not go right, Greiss definitely was showing he wasn't the same goalie. Again, after speaking to other people too, the McDonough goal, when McDonough's going to shoot the puck, whether you could see it or not, he is going to go high. The fact that Greiss stayed low on that made no sense. He made that so much easier for McDonough to score, who's not a goal scorer. But the other thing is Olczyk pointed out. What he pointed out was the Islanders would not play dump and chase, and Tampa forced them into it. And that was smart on Tampa's part because for the first 3 power plays and half that game, the Islanders, they got it over the line, were looking to make the pass right away and not looking to go deep into the zone. And that was a big problem for them. That won't exist next game.
Yeah, Trotz will adjust on that one. I mean, they got into some starting Greiss. I mean, I get what he did against the Flyers in Game 7, but the 2 goalies. When you look at the way the goalies play, I mean, Varlamov is way better suited to play Tampa.
He is
just because he's a side-to-side goalie.
He gave up 5 goals.
Yeah,
Monday morning quarterback now questioning it.
No.
Morning quarterback.
I've been Varlamov the whole friggin' time, man. I have been.
Yeah, it was great. Varlamov stops the puck. That's
no. Listen, I think Varlamov held up before the onslaught happened pretty well. But again, once the Islanders literally stop playing defense, like what's he going to do?
Right, and in that situation, that the Islanders aren't a team that's going to be able to come from behind with 4 or 5 goals. Like that's not against a team like Tampa. I mean, they are not that kind of. That's not how they're built. They're built to play tight games and win at the end, or they hold 1 goal or 2 goal leads. I mean, that's how they do it.
Tampa has better players, but I think this game is easier to write off than if you lose 4-3 in overtime.
And again, like I said, in this play, and no one has believed me, but in this playoff round, every team that's lost by 5 goals,
I was waiting,
has won the series. Okay,
we knew that was coming.
Every one of them has won the series in this playoffs.
I know, but there's so many variables, but it doesn't matter. Here, honestly, Trotz should not. I mean, I don't know why Komarov was not in the lineup. Komarov should always be in the lineup. He causes problems, and he does move the puck around and occasionally create some offense too. Komarov should always be in the lineup. And I'll tell you what, we saw Clutterbuck's not going to be in the lineup. So I would put Komarov in for him, and I would put Dal Cole back in for Ross Johnston because – and again, why is Ross Johnston in there? Well, the third period is going to be a hard period because Ross Johnston's going to hit you in the face. Who cares? Tampa didn't care at that point.
Well, Ross Johnston did probably the most productive thing that an Islander player did, and that was cross-check Sergachev in the ribs. It looked like he almost broke his ribs.
Yeah.
That was basically the best thing that happened for the Islanders in that game.
And Vasilevsky made some great stops. He may not have had a ton of shots against him, but he made 3 grade A stops that if one of those goes in, the Islanders actually could have had the lead in that game. And if they had the lead, I don't know if Tampa would have played the same way.
It changes everything. The Islanders with lead versus the Islanders 2 or 3 goals behind it totally changes. I mean, you can come back on the Flyers when you're 3 goals down, but because the Flyers offense doesn't have the power.
Right.
But if you try to come back on Tampa and you're going to give Tampa more offensive opportunities, you're just going to fall further and further behind. And that's what we saw last night. It just, they could not attack back. So I mean, the reality is, they got to keep this game closer. They got to play a different kind of game.
Everything
and I think
went right for Tampa. Yeah. Everything went right. I mean, I do think they're going to have to, you know what I also like? They were keying in Kucherov. I think they need to key in on Point and leave Kucherov a little bit and worry about that one less because Point is the faster player. Kucherov may have better hands, but Point is the faster player. And you saw you can't get into a foot race, even for a short one with Pulak against Point. You're going to lose that one every time.
Right. No question about it. No, I think you're still in for a long series there. I don't think this is going to be a case where the Islanders can't play with them. And I think game 2. I mean, we could be totally wrong. I mean, I wrote in my. I
could be totally wrong too. This is just what we think.
I wrote my prediction: the Islanders in 7, but if it's not that, it's going to be Tampa in 5. And that's literally what I said. Like if Tampa shows that if the Islanders show they just can't skate with them, it's over.
And that's what. And I took Tampa in 5.
Yeah, and that's very possible. I think. I give the Islanders a little more credit than that, and I give Tampa a little less credit than that because Tampa has the ability sometimes to get comfortable, and I've seen it before. So them blowing them out is not the best thing for them.
But my view on that, Egg, is after the debacle of what happened last year and the fact that I wouldn't say the window is closing, they recognize that there's a limited chance. I think the mindset is a little different for them this year. They recognize that you only get so many kicks at the can before you're going to have to revamp the roster and make changes, and I think it's a different team.
Yeah,
now, granted, the Islanders did have chances, and Vasilevsky blunted a bunch of them early, and a couple of shorthanded and breakaways from Nelson didn't work. So Islanders are clearly going to make this a series. But you saw in that first goal by Point yesterday the skill level that they have up front, and then when their blue line, especially Hedman and McDonough and Sergachev, who I thought was probably the weakest of the 3, but still had a good game, when their blue line is activating the attack like they do, Tampa becomes very difficult to beat.
Yeah. I mean, what Greiss does really well and what he did well against the Flyers. They figured out the Flyers, and this is why I think they pulled Varlamov mainly, is the Flyers were generating all their scoring from the point. Like they were firing the puck back, taking shots, and a lot of deflection goals. Like expect the overtime goals were all like deflection goals, right? And that's where Greiss is better. In general, Greiss can be better than Varlamov on like long deflection goals, but last night he was playing deflections on some of those goals that were long and looking terrible, so it's like I just think that I admire Trotz for going with Greiss because Greiss deserved it, I guess, but at the same time Varley's your goalie. Varley's your goalie, this is a battle the Russian goalies that's going to be a fun one.
You have to say, Act, that it was reflective of maybe a little bit of a lack of confidence in Varlamov after they lost games 5 and 6. So, I mean, they had no choice but to go back to him because Greiss was a sieve early in the first period yesterday.
There's the other thing, one last thing, Mike, and you make a good point there because one thing about Varlamov, too, in his career, he's a better goalie when he gets more shots taken against him than when he gets less. And what the Islanders were out shooting the Flyers horribly in those games. And you would see that. So you would see Varlamov fighting the puck a little bit when he was trying to battle it. Against Tampa, he's going to get plenty of shots, plenty of action. I think Varlamov could fall into a nice rhythm with this thing. We'll see how it plays out, but I think that there's something to that as we go here.
I mean, look, if the Islanders get bad goaltending, it's over.
Of course. Yeah, there's no question. And if they can't score on the power play, it's over.
Well, if they also don't keep out of the box, it's going to be over because there was at least half a dozen penalties that were just stupid penalties.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to be it's going to be. I think both series game ones were a little bit.
So one thing, in my opinion, I thought what Dallas did, to me, Vegas looked heavy-legged. They looked awfully slow. They looked like the number of games over and over, especially the back-to-backs, took a material toll on them. You didn't see that burst and jump through the neutral zone that we saw in every other series. I think with a day off, another day off in between now, I think you're going to see a completely different Vegas team tonight.
Yeah, but
you know how hard they had to work to beat Demko in those two games. I mean, this is their third game in 4 nights. They're playing last night, right, or 2 nights ago.
Yeah, their feet were heavy. Like they
had no burst. They had no jump at all.
They had to work so hard to score on Demko in those 3 games. It was just insane. They were exhausted.
But the one thing, and like I said, I'd pick Vegas to win this series. But the one thing that will make this series more difficult than people think is that Dallas up front is not going to be intimidated and is as big as Vegas is. Now Reeves will be in the lineup tonight, but they've got Janmark, they've got Hintz, they've got Dickinson. They're the top of their lineup. They have veteran guys in Pavelski and Perry. They can withstand what Vegas is going to put out there. I just don't know whether Hudobin is going to be able to get them through the series like he got them through against Colorado.
I'll tell you, the positive for Dallas is putting Jamie Benn on his own line, and he played like he looked like he was 2-3 years ago. Jamie Benn, if he could do that, that's going to cause a problem for Dallas for Vegas because that's created another line. Then,
well, they said the problem
Vegas is scoring goals. Vegas' confidence in scoring goals is not very good right now. I mean, you can go back to Demko.
Stone's banged up too. It's not helping them.
Yeah, but then you go into the first game of this series, and the last thing they needed was to get shut out. Like this is a team that needs after what Demko did to them in a couple games.
And Pacioretty's taking stupid penalties, but they needed to separate Ben from Seguin because Seguin is playing with some sort of hand injury. That's the indication right now. It's like that's the reason why. Like he's skating great. He's hustling. He's hitting people. He's just I've seen him take shots. He's inaccurate. It's got to be some sort of hand injury. Yeah. That definitely limits him.
This was a 1-goal game. I'm not going to overanalyze it. I'm not.
Right. Yeah, but I just think that Dallas will be a tougher out than people think against Vegas.
Oh, they will be. They will be. I think it's going to be. I thought it was similar to 7-game series.
Dallas has proved worthy. They really have.
Yeah, and they're both. But I think at the end of the day, Vegas will find a way to get them. But they have to get back in game 2, and they got to score goals. If they get in a situation where they score 1 or 2, I mean, they need a 4-goal, 5-goal game. That Vegas does to get themselves back into because they've gone really cold. You can say one about the goaltending, but I mean, I thought actually Khudobin having that shutout, like in a way, it didn't harm Demko, but it didn't help Demko as far as like what we've seen.
But I don't think Vegas had any way, shape, or form the kind of attack that they had against Demko.
No,
not even
they did
what the pressure Demko faced.
No, that's very true. That's very true.
I don't even think it matters who Vegas puts in net for next game either. I think it's all about the other things we're talking about.
Fleury was fine,
Yeah, but they're going to go back to Leonard because Fleury started because Leonard played back-to-back nights. That's the reason why.
It was like the first time Leonard won a back-to-back game in forever, right? Something crazy. It was a crazy stat. Some crazy stat. Like Leonard has a horrible back-to-back record. But yeah, this is. I don't know. I think game 2. I don't think we've seen these real series yet. Like I don't feel
no.
I don't think either of those games has been like I think you're going to have a higher scoring series in Vegas than a 1-0 game. And I think you're going to have a lower scoring series with the Islanders.
I'll say this because the team that played against Calgary and the team that played against Colorado is not the Dallas Stars team of the regular season. Remember, they had 180 goals for, 177 goals against, second best in the NHL, and they have been playing wide open offensively the first 2 rounds. The team that played against Vegas was the regular season Stars, and maybe they know that they have to play that way and limit Vegas to be able to win. So maybe that's the type of game we're going to see them play. Yeah,
that's very possible. That is true.
All right, so let's go back to the Crawford discussion for a second because my theory is here the market, the goalie market is so flooded that you're going to see teams trying to lowball some of these free agents, and maybe Stan Bowman is pulling on the heartstrings of Corey Crawford, saying, you can stay here, but you're going to have to take a discount to stay here. It's sort of like what Pekka Rinne and Nashville did. Remember, he was making $7 million, and when they re-signed him to, I think it was a 2-year deal, I think they signed him for $5 million. So that might be what's at work there, but it's a question of whether Crawford has the confidence to go out in the open market and to go someplace else for an extra $1 million to $1.5 million. And maybe he takes $3.5 million to stay in Chicago.
I think with the world the way it is right now, people are going to want to stay at home. I think people are going to want to not move into new cities, not try to get their kids in new school districts. I think there's something very beneficial to Crawford staying in Chicago. And I think they know that, and I think Crawford knows that. And I think he signs with them for less, maybe a little bit more than this. Maybe he gets another.
His agent's not going to want him to take a 1-year deal, though.
No, he's not. But maybe he gets 2 years out of it. Maybe he says, okay, we'll take 3.5 for 2 years. Over 7 over 2 years or whatever. Maybe that's where this ends up. But I think that this is a good first volley by Chicago.
It is,
and this might work for him. But if you take this blueprint and transfer it to the other big name goaltender free agents, it's not going to work with Holtby, because Holtby knows that Samsonov is in the waiting in the wings in Washington, and if he re-signs there, it's going to be for less, and he's not going to be the number one. And it's the same thing with Markstrom. I don't know whether Vancouver would be willing to sign Markstrom for as much as they were going to be willing to sign him maybe 3 weeks ago. And now that Demko has showed that he's maybe ready for prime time, maybe they're not willing to pay him either. So, I mean, that may be unique to Crawford, but I still think that the more intriguing situation when it comes to all these goaltenders are the ones who are the trade guys, the Matt Murrays, the Kempers, the Flurries, all these guys, because there's going to be musical chairs here. There's going to be a number of teams looking for goalies, a number of teams looking for to change their current situations.
Yeah, and you're starting to hear.
I mean, the thing is, don't remember, Crawford with 2 years allows Chicago then to expose him in the expansion draft. So that has to be factored in also if they go for more than 1 year, depending on who else they add in between the pipes.
And the Red Wings are going to be looking for a goalie too, because they could get a goalie and just have Bernier be the backup for his last year.
And Ottawa needs a goalie also.
And San Jose, maybe if they wanted to move on from Martin Jones and Calgary. I mean, there's a lot of teams.
There's musical chairs potentially of goalies this year.
Toronto, Carolina. I mean, there's a lot of teams.
Which is why I think Vancouver has to make a decision soon.
Yes.
In terms of what they're going to do on Markstrom, like we talked about, because they don't want to get shut out if they're going to move on, because they need to marshal resources for a couple different line areas.
I think they're in a real spot here, because I think going off of Demko's, I mean, these miraculous performances is not what you want to be using to make your decision on Markstrom. To me, I think that's really risky. If suddenly you're okay giving up Markstrom because of what you saw Demko.
I don't know. I mean, what else are you going to use it on except testing a guy in the highest pressure possible circumstances? I think that is what you want to use.
I mean,
it's not as if Demko wasn't a big prospect, right? It's not like they just picked some guy up off the streets. I mean, he was there.
No, he wasn't.
This isn't Andrew Hammond. This is different.
Right. I mean, there is a middle ground here. They could sign Markstrom and then expose him in the expansion draft to Seattle.
Yeah, that's when I say you only give him a 3-year deal.
Right, but that's also a year now. You've now paid him, which also means you can't fix the other. Look, I think they're 2 years ahead of pace, is what. And I spoke to a friend of mine who's a Canucks fan.
I think so too.
He said it to me. He said they're two. Like, so if you could do that and get somebody in free agency next year and free up cap room that way, that's fine. Because obviously then Edler will be off your books and a couple other guys. That may be the direction they're going, but they need to make sure they have a good sense as to who they think is going to be available in the defensive free agent market next season.
Now, in the surprising category for me, I'm a little surprised that the Leafs gave permission to Washington to talk to Babcock, unless they got some guarantee from the Capitals that they're going to pay him comparable to what he was paid in Toronto, because they will if they're going to take him off their books, they want him all off their books.
Yeah, but I agree with that, Mike, but I don't think there's any harm in letting them talk to him.
No.
Because if the Leafs say you can't talk to him, then everybody's going to be like, why are you doing that? Because he may talk to him and Washington may not like him.
Right.
There's no way a team like that fires their coach won't let anybody talk to the guy.
Right. I don't think they want that on their.
It's completely against everything in the hockey world. Like
no,
that.
no. I just think that basically, from what I've heard from a lot of reporting, is that the Leafs would have only given permission for Babcock to speak as if the other team had said, okay, well, we're gonna, if we sign him, we'll pay him $5 million. So most of the salary that they owe him for the last 3 years is off of their books. If that's the case,
they don't really care about the money, though, do they? Really? I mean,
I think they don't want to be paying
it's not a salary cap issue, but yeah, I mean, like, I think that once you fired your coach, you have to just let him go. Like, the reality is you can't sit there and play, because if they play games with him, that's gonna play way worse in the whole.
It's gonna look bad for them. It will.
GM world that'll look at them and say, like, we're not gonna go there because, I mean, if they could fire me and then not let me talk to somebody else.
Well, in the end, they gave him permission, and from what I understand, there is a connection with Washington through Ross Mahoney, one of their assistant GMs with Babcock. So, I mean, I don't know whether he's a leading contender. Elliot Friedman said he's a serious contender along with Laviolette and Gallant, but I have no idea which direction they're going to go.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's it. I just think that, yeah, you got to let him go.
I still think it's going to be Laviolette if those are the choices.
Yeah.
I can't. That's the funny thing. I can't see Alex Ovechkin signing off on Babcock. I really can't.
And he won't sign up on Gallant either, I don't think. But Laviolette, yeah, he'll have an open offense to do whatever the hell he wants.
Right.
Oh, well, yeah, but then, we also have to know how long Ovechkin's going to be there,
Well, true, but they're rolling the dice on that anyhow, Ek.
Right.
Yeah, they might know something, though, is what I'm saying. They might think about that we don't know.
That's true.
And, like, I wouldn't be shocked because Ovechkin, and the owner are very tight, and I wouldn't be shocked if they know something else. If he knows how long exactly Ovechkin.
No, that's fair.
And if he does, then if they do bring Babcock in, they could tell you.
Look, Ovechkin doesn't need the money, so his contract could run out and he could sign a series of 1-year deals. Nobody's going to say boo to that.
Right. No one's going to say boo to that. The bigger question is, I think he's just going to, I think, like you've said many times, Russ, I think he's going to go back to Russia and just be and he's going to have the rest of his career there and become like the czar of the Russian Hockey Federation. Like, I could think that's where he wants to be.
Hopefully he doesn't call himself the czar.
Yeah. Yes, true. But that could be the case. All right, so that's all we have time for today, folks. Thanks again for watching. Remember, you can go to patreon.com/hockey to support the show. We'd really appreciate that. We will be back tomorrow. Let's see what happens tonight in Game 2. And stay tuned for all the rumors out there that are fit to be talked about. We'll talk to you soon. Remember, without the buzz, it is just